Welcome to the next meeting from the Careers for the Planet series. Thanks for being here. This time, our guest is Marla Lise. Welcome. Thank you so much for uh, being here for this meeting.
Thanks for having me.
Um, Marla is the founder of the Eco Chapter, but she is also our adjudicating panel member. So we are very happy to have you here today, and we cannot wait to hear more about your journey and how to build your climate character. So I will hand it over to you, Marla,
Yeah.
and you can share your screen.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Magda, for the introduction. I'm like slightly nervous because I'm in Sri Lanka at the moment and we're having massive issues with the petrol crisis, with electricity and internet and gas and everything else. So if I freeze, if I look really silly, please don't take screenshots. And if I stop, I'll try and make up for whatever got stuck along the way. But hopefully we are good for the next hour. I'm praying to all the internet gods in every single part of the world. That will be good. I want to say hello to lots of familiar faces. Thank you for coming and joining. This might be very, very low level for you, but like I guess it'd be good to have you think about your own story. Because the few of you that I can see already have a climate character. So let's see how it goes. Yeah, so while we're still waiting for some people to arrive, I'm just gonna start to share my screen. I hope that works too. So just give me a nod if you can see that. Yeah, all good. All right, cool. All right, so there's a QR code at the bottom of the screen as well. That's how you can contact me. All my details are there. The website. I write a Substack every week as well, an article every week. So all the links to anything that you would like to how to find me, they're all there. So yeah, so let's get started, I guess. We have a few minutes together and hopefully this will be interesting for you. But before we start, I'm gonna get you guys to do some work. So this is me. Where can I go next? So yeah, this is me, and I'm gonna get you guys to think about the three questions that were actually on the registration form. So wherever you can write, whether it's on your computer, maybe open up a Word document on your phone, on your notes, or if you have a pen and paper, please go run and get it. The three questions are at the bottom. So what you're going to do is free writing. Free writing is literally writing without stopping for 5 minutes. I'm going to put a timer and I'll tell you when to go and when to stop. There is no questioning, no correction, no judgment, no censorship of whatever you're writing. It does not have to be grammatically good or correct. What we're trying to see is all your ideas. So write as much as possible, as fast as possible, get everything out of your head without judging whatever you're writing. Okay, so once everyone's ready, I'm going to put a timer for 5 minutes. And the questions are there at the bottom. So they're the same ones that you might have already answered when you registered for the session. But ultimately, what do you feel is the biggest problem facing the world right now? What are the gaps that need to be filled? And how you see yourself filling those gaps. So I also don't want anyone to write anything in the chat just yet. Okay, I just want you to have them in your head and now on piece of paper or on your notes or on your Microsoft Word somewhere. And then we'll think about them. We'll bring them back into the session a little bit later on. Okay, so I see some people are ready. Oh, some people have pen and paper. And I'm going to start the 5 minutes now. So just write everything and anything that comes out without censorship, without judgment, answering those three questions, and then just keep them to yourself for now. I'm just going to let you guys keep those for now in the back of your mind. And I'm going to share with you a little bit about my story and how I ended up with my climate character. So this is my story about how I got to where I am today. And I'm really, really grateful to the Earth Prize team for allowing me to share this in Careers for the Planet. And for those of you who are part of the Earth Prize, I'm really excited to look at all your work next week because I'm also part of the adjudicating panel. So I'm excited to get started with that. So yeah, really excited. So this is how I started. I started off as this nerdy kid that really liked books and animals. And literally went around the neighborhood and picked up every cat I could find, brought them home in my backpack. I brought them home in plastic bags in any way I could just fit them into the house, and had them in the house until my parents would make me kick them out, or bring them to the vet, or the SPCA, or depending on what was their state. I managed to keep two. So this one in the middle was my first cat, called Whirlwind. And that's kind of where my love for animals started. It was really at a really young age. And so it's kind of been a part of my life since I was pretty much my whole life. Yeah. And then from there, I was really lucky and I did a degree in animal science. I went to Australia and I spent 7 years there. I did 4 years of animal science and was very, very clear that this is what I wanted to continue my life doing. So I then came back to Singapore after Australia. I did a master's in environmental science, because I was just looking for what I could do in order to save these animals in our planet. And back in the day, when I was doing my degrees, nobody was really talking about the climate. Nobody was talking about sustainability. Nobody was talking about environmental science, especially in Singapore, where I'm from. And so it was really difficult to find places that I felt fulfilled. It was really difficult for me to find spaces that I could work in, that I felt like I was giving back to conservation. So after doing my environmental science master's, I actually bought a one-way ticket to Brazil. I didn't know what Brazil was. I didn't know what language they spoke. I didn't know how long I was going for. But I booked 2 weeks at Wildlife Conservation Society's volunteering program in the Pantanal, and I just went. I packed a bag. Actually, I packed two really, really, really big bags, pretty much of everything I owned, and decided that this was what I wanted to do. And so from there, I was really lucky to then continue traveling for almost 4 years, 4 or 5 years. So some of the photos I'm going to show you are some of the experiences that I had during that time. I was just so taken by the other world that was not Singapore or a very city-centered Perth, Western Australia. I was so taken by the jungles. I was so taken by the nature, and I was also so taken by lots of stories of animals. So you can see here that I have this little ocelot that's sitting in my lap. Her name was Ankas. I think is still Ankas. She might still be alive. I'm not sure. But Ankas's mother was shot because her at the time, well, they still do this, right? They still shoot animals for their skin, and they also want to keep the kittens as pets. So they shoot the mothers in order to have them as pets, or to have the skins, and then they sell that on the illegal wildlife trade. I also you guys can see the sign in the bottom left corner where we're talking about, animals don't belong in captivity; they really belong in the wild. And so these were some of the places that I got to spend some time in, and I was working there as a volunteer for many, many, many months in Peru, in Bolivia, in Ecuador. And then also you can see on the bottom right corner, it's a leash with a collar. And that collar, comparing to the size of my hand, was around the neck of a monkey. So the monkey's neck was actually just all like torn and like cut because of the size of this string that was around its neck. So obviously as the monkey grew, the string stayed the same size and the monkey's neck just got cut. And so we had to pretty much dig into all this flesh to cut it off. And the monkey didn't survive, but we had so many cases like this. I also went to the Galapagos. So on the top right corner is one of the Galapagos iguanas. And for me, that was really so special because I had studied animal science, right? Charles Darwin was what I grew up with. So for me to go to Galapagos was really super special. And eventually I started diving as well. So that's me on the top left-hand side. I don't know if I'm on the right side of your screen, um, but you can tell from the photos. I'm not an iguana and the iguana is not me. All right. So yeah, I started diving as well. And so I got introduced to the whole marine conservation world. Um, and kept going. So I went back to Bolivia the second time, and here I stayed as the director of administration. So I stayed in this volunteer role for almost 11 months, and it was really trying to get the local communities involved in what we were trying to do. because it wasn't enough that we as the volunteers or as this organization was saying that, oh, we have to save the animals. We really had to get the local people involved so they wouldn't be shooting the leopards or the ocelots or the bears that were there. They weren't taking the monkeys as pets. And so we went to lots of schools and we did programs with them as well. Um, Eventually, I got more interested in, so I left South and Central America and I continued diving and got really into marine conservation as well. So here, I felt that the biggest problem facing the world for me was that because I had come from a degree in animal science and environmental science, I knew all these things that I've slowly found that nobody else knew about. Like I had already been reading about climate change. I had already been reading about the illegal wildlife trade. I already knew that animals shouldn't be in captivity, that they last a lot longer in the wild, that they run for miles and miles and miles, whereas in captivity they're in small cages, and that there are different ways to protect livestock rather than killing wildlife. So I felt that there was a huge gap. How come I knew these things, but so few other people knew about them? And even the volunteers that were coming, they were coming, not all of them, obviously, but many of them were coming just to take a photo, and to show people, hey, look, I have this picture with a monkey, I have a picture with this ocelot or a leopard or a bear. And that was because there was this huge gap and this huge lack of knowledge and education. So for me, that was the biggest problem that I found, in my opinion. And for me as well, because during the time between my degrees, I became so when I came back to Singapore, actually, I got trained to become an English teacher. And so for me, it was really that, right? When I got trained to become an English teacher, I was like, this is why. This is why nobody understands the science, because it's difficult, right? Nobody else would on a Sunday morning read a whole bunch of journal research papers. I would, because I understood what they meant. I knew how to extract the data from it, and I was able to make sense of it and to learn something from it. And so during this time becoming an English teacher, I found that words are so powerful, right? If you're not able to understand something because of the words that they're being used, then it's really difficult for you to get any value from it. And so I started exploring this whole idea of how words can change how we relate to things and how we can change perceptions. So language is really the root of all our decisions, our relationships, our dreams, and our actions. Everything that we do starts off with language. A thought becomes a behavior becomes a habit is then chooses our friends, our relationships, our partners, and even our jobs, right? So a lot of it comes from the root cause, which is really the language and how we create these narratives in our head, not necessarily a language that we use as a mother tongue, like English or Chinese or Spanish or something like that, but also the language that comes from it within us. And so that for me was really important, because when we have that language in our brains, we're ultimately creating this world view based on the languages that we are forming, both internal and external, and how that they're relating to other people. And so if, for example, I'm a scientist, the language that I use and know and understand is very science heavy. Therefore, my world will be very science heavy, because even my friends will be from university. They would be people who can talk to me about animal science, about the illegal wildlife trade. Maybe they've gone traveling in South America. Maybe they've realized similar things. And that would be my world. And that would be my little bubble. Everybody else's world would not be in my realm because of the language that they are using. And that's why for me, that was such a big gap between the science that I knew in my world and the language everybody else was using, which was very non-science, right? All the neverthelesses and moreovers and therefores don't really exist in everyday speak. So all these different worlds are created because of our language. And so then our perceptions of other people's worlds can also be influenced by this language and the words that we use, right? So I'm just going to give you an example. So for example, for climate change, so the UN started changing the way they describe climate change. They started calling it the climate crisis rather than climate change, right? Just changing the word from change to crisis made it really, really different, right? Like even when you say the word crisis, I'm sure you can actually feel physiologically that there is some kind of panic. There's something that's not just on the surface, it actually affects us internally because of the words that we use and the meanings that we put towards these words. So for me, that became such an important thing for me to realize that words were super important and how people were using them could really change our worlds. And so that was the gap that I saw that needed filling. How then do I bring science, all these words and this worldview that I created for myself, based on conservation principles, based on environmental science principles, based on we need to help our planet because we are part of the planet. How do I bring that into all the other people's worlds as well? And so that was my gap. And that's the gap that I wanted to fill. This was already around 2017, 2018. And so I also saw that a lot of other people's words were like this, right? Because they didn't understand the words, the world and the words that I was using as an educated person in the climate space or in the ecological crisis space or whichever space, sustainability space, these were the words that were coming out of their mouths because they had no idea what these were meaning. And so therefore, all this jargon, all these technicalities, all this science became really scary, right? So people either were like, I'm tired of hearing the same story again and again and again. We can't do anything about it. I don't want to hear about it. I'm not going to do anything. Apathy, fatigue, or it was like, I'm not going to have kids because it's too depressing. We don't know what's happening with this world. Or it was like, no, climate change is not real. It's a hoax. Or if you were already in that field, it almost got to a point of burnout because there were so many people not in your world. It got very difficult to hold the fort. And that was for me, like very, very scary at some points because I kept questioning myself as well. Maybe this is wrong. Maybe I'm not right. Maybe the science is wrong. Maybe there's a bigger picture here. And so ultimately what happens is that you kind of feel hopeless, right? If you're not able to understand something and you're constantly seeing it on the news, you're constantly seeing it outside your window for some people, you really start to feel hopeless. And so I found that a lot of people were kind of depressed and moving almost into paralysis. Because if you looked on the news, if you watched social media, if you listened to the radios, all the news that were coming was doom and gloom. It was always about horrible, horrible statistics of unnatural weather patterns, about the war now. Here in Sri Lanka, we have this huge petrol crisis, fuel crisis, resource crisis. In Singapore, the prices are going through the roof. Everything's getting super expensive. So it's really difficult then, to do anything because you're just like hopeless, right? And so then for me in 2023, I found myself thinking about how do I fill this gap? Now that I've had the science degrees, done my master's, gone to South America, and now become an English teacher, how do I put all these together to fill this gap that I feel I have found? So, and that's when I started with the Eco chapter. So this is taken from the website, um, which which literally just talks about the fact that the words that we are using are stressing us out, right? What if a better world could exist through a better vocabulary because of how important language plays in our lives? It's so simple to say, oh, this is a resource, right? Fuel and oil and gas, they're resources. But what if we were to change that word and call it a gift? Because ultimately, resources are free gifts from planet Earth, right? From Mother Nature. Our oil is from the dead bodies of, from the Carboniferous era of all the dinosaurs and the ferns and the things on the land. And then we have all the things in the water for charcoal and oil. And these are gifts. They were given to us and nobody did anything. And yet we're using them and costing money, lots and lots of money for them. We're also fighting wars over them because we're calling it a resource, something to be used, something to be exploited, something to have power over. Whereas a gift is sacred. A gift is something that was given for free, that we can use, that we usually will share with someone, right? Just because of that word usage, things change quite a lot. Even physiologically, it starts to shift. So that's kind of how the Eco chapter was born. That whole idea of how do I use now the words that I've found in literature and English and use that to kind of translate science into something a little bit more palatable for everyone. And so how the Eco chapter works is really around three functions. And so I put a QR code there if you want to look at the website. But ultimately, we're talking about reimagination. relearning foundations of science, right? It doesn't have to be anything super technical. It doesn't have to be anything with lots of jargon. It's really just understanding the 101 of how this planet works, which is, first of all, that resources, for example, are finite. We cannot keep using them forever. Even though we keep fighting over them and we keep putting prices on them, at some point they're not going to exist anymore, right? So that's like 101 of resources, right? The fact that we don't have them forever. No way, right? So reimagining that, the foundations. Then we're talking about re-education, where we're doing consulting, where it's like, okay, if you have a strategy in mind, if you have an idea in mind, is it valid? Because is it based on the science? And if it's not, then we need to re-educate and relearn that. Because let's say, for example, we take recycling, plastic recycling. A lot of countries say they do plastic recycling, but it does not exist because the infrastructure is not there, right? It's very easy to say, oh, we have this recycling bin. So I take all my plastic and I put it in a bin. And I wish to the recycling fairy that this plastic is going to be magically recycled and turned into another plastic bottle. In most cases, that does not exist, right? Because the science behind the recycling is not there. So the re-education is going back to the science and saying, okay, if this is your strategy, this is not going to work, and this is why. And then regenerating stories of hope, of better future narratives, rather than all this hopeless apathy, denialism, burnout, and depression, right? If we know how things work, we can make better solutions for it. And then ultimately, it's how do we get everybody together, right? How do we make change as a community rather than individuals? So for me, I've been really, really lucky to be given so many opportunities. So I do things like storytelling workshops, talks like this. I also started doing book clubs in Singapore in my house. And I also do lots of things where it's really small groups who are coming together to talk about the climate, talk about the planet, to talk about ourselves as people. I also have been, here with the Earth Prize. I got to talk at Alta COP, which is an alternative COP, Conference of the Parties in Singapore. I'm also now a keynote speaker for Women Keynote Speakers Global. And I also do a podcast with Brad, who's in the US. So there's so many things that I found that I could do just because I found my climate character, right? Which we'll talk about later. I've also done a lot of marine conservation. So I got opportunities to work at the ocean race last year in the summer. And I volunteer with a marine conservation group called the International Seakeepers. And I got to meet all these famous people. So that's Fabien Cousteau, Jacques Cousteau's grandson, Pip O'Hare, who sailed around the world and runs so many races. And of course, that's Johan Rockström, the guy who did the planetary boundaries. So me and my fan moments, I've just been super lucky. And I've also written a book with five of my friends. So five of us got together and we've actually published a book now last October. And this QR code scans to that website. So you can actually buy it online if you'd like. And it's called Dreams of Envisioned Futures. Ultimately, the book talks about short stories and poems about a better future narrative. Because so what I found was like a lot of people that I was asking, what's your better idea of a better future? And they would say more money, bigger house, bigger car, or a car, a Mercedes-Benz, BMW, never have to work again, this kind of thing. But when we think about it, right, this whole idea of never having to work again or having lots of money is really to have time to do what we want, right? And if you think about what most people find valuable is like relationships, your family, your friends, the time to have a coffee in peace without having kids running around, the time to go traveling and see the wonders of the world, right? All these things are really the better future narrative. So what if we all just work towards that? So ultimately, that's what the book talks about, a better future narrative. So now that's kind of been my three questions answered. And now I'm going to ask you guys, because you already have written some of it down. So I'm putting the questions back here again. And because we don't have that much time, I'm just going to ask a few people if you would like to speak up. Someone wrote something in chat. She's basically an all-rounder when it comes to nature. Yes. If anybody wants to just unmute yourself and to answer, I think Amy wrote something in the chat earlier. If you want to say something, that'd be great.
I currently feel that the biggest problem the world is facing right now is the gap that is between just being aware and that's it, and actually taking action. So, to close those gaps, I believe we need to create more practical initiatives like this, for example, where people can not only learn and raise awareness, but also actively participate and feel like they are truly part of something that can be part of a solution. I think I can help by bringing these initiatives into schools and creating a space where students can engage, take action, and build habits from a young age.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. I think the going into schools is really, really important. I know in Singapore, they're not very much in schools yet. Hoping to change that. But it's definitely going to be your futures, right? It's the younger generations that are now going to have to deal with what's going on in the world because my generation and above will not be here. So the younger we can tell people about these things, the more ready you're going to be when it's, you are now an adult and now have to deal with it. So that's great. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. And I also see Roshani's hand.
Hi.
Roshani, yeah, hi.
Okay, should I start?
Yes.
Okay, so what I believe is like, humans, like not very specific, like not very specifying, but like if we talk in like groups, right? So humans are greedy, and it's the like very for profit approach that humans are doing. So what I think it's like a very like for profit approach for everything, and not caring about something much more important that really matters, like the planet and even humankind itself. Let's talk about like the buzzword AI. We all know AI is like here, like everywhere. Like, but let's be real. Like, who cares? Okay, some of the people do, and like actually making worth it about the AI thing, right? Like, like we are using AI where like it actually matters, but they're like very like small amount of or like group of people who are actually doing it. So the first thing is like basically like realizing that we should think of us, the ecosystem, the planet, that like let's be real. If we like if like our own self don't exist, we can't be like that doesn't make sense. Even if we have some bizarre inventions, like no one's gonna use it if we are not like present there to use it. And what I gonna do is like I'm like planning to take like HCI major, which is like human centered human computer interaction, as a minor in a college. So whatever I gonna do, like whatever I do in like future or whatever, like let's say my like work or something like that, so it will be good for mankind, and it will like not for greed of humans. And it will make sure like whatever I do is like human first and for people first, rather than very like for business or for profit approach.
Great. We should vote Roshani for politician. Yes. You should get into politics. But thanks for sharing. Yeah, I mean, technology can be used as a tool, right? It doesn't have to be always negative. So it would be great if we have more people that are able to see that this is a positive tool and we can use it as such. So thanks, Roshani, and good luck with your minor and go for politics.
Thanks.
Sorry?
Thanks.
Oh, yeah, welcome. And maybe Ahmed, do you want to go
I
next?
live in Cairo, where I saw how air quality is heavily affected by vehicle emissions and industrially activities. I have realized that environmental pollution remains a significant challenge across Africa, driven by rapid urbanization. Near the Nile, I noticed that many African countries struggle with plastic waste management in visual water source. I also learned deforestation and unsustainable farming contribute to soil degradation and desertification. So, however, I feel hopeful because Egypt and other African nations are increasingly investing in renewable energy and green initiatives.
And how do you see yourself filling those gaps?
Uh,
Will you be working in renewable
I,
energy too?
I work in like filter in the both on card and facilities.
Yeah.
It filters air and water. Use the water to cool the filter down from the heat.
Okay. Right. So you're already working with like industrial ecology where one thing fills.
No, I still in school, high school. I'm 16 years old, so
Right. Well, that's amazing that you're thinking like this at 16. So
uh,
thank you for sharing. Ronald, I think maybe we have time for two more. So Ronald can go and then I'll read the stuff in the chat. Hi, Ronald.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so my name is Ronald, and I I am from Africa, Nigeria to be precise. Okay, so basically when it comes to Africa, when it comes to Nigeria, we have existential problems. Our existential problems are based on, poverty and a whole lot of other factors. But the main issue we have in Africa when it comes to this issue of climate change, sustainability, and all that is the problem of information. There's a knowledge gap. A lot of people do not know. I mean, there are a lot of denials here in Africa. There are a lot of they're not like institutional denials, but I mean they deny the fact that these things are there, right? And it's affecting how agriculture is being practiced. It's affecting how the whole issue of sustainability is put in place. So where I see myself in the entire thing and how I hope to fill the gap is to get involved in sensitization, get involved in education. Like I have to let people know. Presently, I'm in Ghana. I'm in the University of Ghana studying for a master's degree in climate change and sustainable development. So I hope to take all the experience and all I'm learning from this and every other person and I'll put it to work there and ensure that people get to know and do better.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, the guys with the loudest voices are heard, right? And so the guys that get heard are all the people who make so much money and own the commercials and the advertising and the schools and essentially the economy. So the rest of us really need to start writing more stories and make more noise. I'm just going to read the stuff in the chat as well. So from Amy before. So Amy was saying international politics is a problem, and she can fill the gap by sharing the arguments with students. So education, right, ultimately. And then George was also talking about unsustainable consumption, and he's already contributing to systems level solutioning initiatives, which is great. So systems level is something else that is lacking, I think. The idea that people are looking at problems very on a surface level, rather than realizing they're all systems. So they're all like connected together. And so we need to solve a problem by looking at something holistically rather than just saying like, oh, I'm going to put a Band-Aid over here, whereas, everything over here is just bleeding uncontrollably. So this idea of systems thinking is also really important. Stella talks about climate change, and so taking action again with advocacy, so education again. Cool.
I am Ahmed and I'm 16 years old. Uh, in my opinion, one of the biggest problems in the world today is the lack of access to clean water, especially in poor or remote areas. One of the main gaps is that there are not enough laboratories or advanced equipment to test water quality, so people may use unsafe water without knowing. It is even harder in areas affected by war because laboratories may be destroyed or people cannot safely reach them. This makes it very difficult to check if water is safe, and many people may drink contaminated water without realizing it. I see myself helping by creating a simple and portable device that can test water easily without the need of complex or expensive equipment. This can help people check their water and stay safe. I also want to share this idea with students and raise awareness about the importance of clean water.
Yeah, thank you, Amit. So I'm glad that you already have a solution in mind.
Yes, and I also work on it.
Yeah, and you're already working on it. It's amazing. So I'm just going to finish Lavanya. So Lavanya also talks about outreach and art, which I really like. So yeah, so like a lot of people think, oh, I'm just one person, I can't do anything. But just in our small little circle here, we have so many solutions, and a lot of it seems to center around education and awareness. So it's very easy for us to say this, right? I'm just one person, I can't do anything about it. But there's 8 billion of us, right? And if we get together, if we're all able to start educating each other, bring awareness in, start understanding bigger picture, systems thinking, then we can really do something. Because ultimately, what we want to do is break this triangle of inaction. So, what's happening in this triangle is that consumers or individuals point to the government and they say, oh, the government should do it, right? Because they're the government. They should write policies, they need to do governance, they need to change all these things. And then the governments are usually owned by the corporates who have all the money. And so the governments are looking at the corporates saying that, oh, no, it's your problem. And the corporates, the producers, are looking at the consumers, the individuals, and saying, well, we're supplying your demand, right? So this is what's happening. And so nothing happens because there's this triangle of inaction of everybody waiting for everybody to do something else, right? So what we really need to do is to start working on it from the grassroots level up. So I'm sharing with you a couple of quotes. So the world doesn't change one person at a time, it changes with a network of relationships that come together with people who discover that they share a common cause and a vision of what's possible. So rather than worry about critical mass, we really want to foster these kinds of critical connections. And for those of you who are in schools, who are in, working in offices, in organizations, who are here as part of the Earth Prize, you're already part of a group. You already have that critical mass in order to do something. And this one is really famous, right, from Margaret Mead, this idea that, small groups of citizens have changed the world. And so why can't we change the world now, right? And another thing about leadership, this idea of looking towards somebody who is a leader is also quite false because we are all leaders. Somebody is always looking towards us, right? No matter how much we think we are low on the food chain, if we're just an intern, if we're just a student, if I'm just 12 years old, somebody younger or somebody older might even be looking up to us, right? Maybe your parents are looking to you as an example because you're learning all these things in school. So you really never know who you are influencing. And so therefore, you're always going to be a leader, right? So finishing up, I want to just ask you a question, right? Which future do you want to help create? So business as usual is what we're doing now, right? We are looking towards 2.5 to 3 degrees warming based on the Paris Agreement. We can see that climate is getting worse. We can see injustice is getting worse. Now, at the moment, we have a war going on, not just one, many. We're also looking at nature as a resource and not for profit. Okay, so this is scenario one, business as usual, where we stay like this, and it's probably going to get worse. Or it's going to be really, really, really bad because we're not going to do anything. We're all just going to sit here and be, oh, I'm hopeless. It's hopeless. I'm depressed. I don't believe it's true. I'm just going to hide in the sand and wait for the politicians to do something. And this is actually what's going to happen. We're going to move towards 4 to 6 degrees warming. We're going to have horrible things like disease, conflict, which is already happening now, and even worse, the 6th mass extinction. We already had 5, and we're moving towards number 6. Or we can take a stand and say, you know what, this is also my life and I can do something about it. And that's really scenario 3, which is the great turning. So these phrases are all from Joanna Macy, and she talked about this new era of symbiosis, where symbiosis of people working together in harmony with the planet and the more than human, the other than human, and all working together. And now all we need to do is to get there is to raise awareness and write better stories, right? So the last bit is for you to really build your climate character. I want you guys to think about these 3 things. Now that you've thought about those 3 questions, right? What gaps there are, how do I fill them? Now I want to think about what brings you joy, what are you good at, and what work needs doing. So I'm going to give you like 3 minutes to fill in these circles with your idea of, what is your joy. It doesn't have to be related to the ecological crisis at all. It could just be singing. It could be writing poetry. It could be, I don't know, building houses. And what work needs doing, this is based on the gaps that you were talking about earlier. And then what are you good at, right? Because sometimes what you're good at and what brings you joy are not the same thing. Okay, so fill in this Venn diagram and try and see if you can figure out your climate action in the middle. So we're just around 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Okay, time is up. I'm just going to use Ronald's example just to explain how you can do this, right? So ultimately, I guess he says what brings him joy is aesthetics and design and building systems, right? And then he's good at training and public speaking. And the work that he's doing is climate education. So ultimately, that middle center where the Venn diagram meets is now your climate action. How do you put all these three things to work? Right? And if you were, so that's the next thing now, if you were to put this action hero now, right? So ultimately, we're bringing this guy into life. So I would like you guys to take that middle, that climate action hero, and draw something that would represent him. Okay, I'm really, really bad at drawing. So I just cut this stuff up. But ultimately, you want to draw this climate action character, right? We're building your climate character. So I'm not going to give you 3 minutes. I'm going to give you 5, but this is mine. So mine's ultimately a butterfly, Marla Butterfly, who travels around the world teaching people about the power of words, the eco power of words through my company. Because ultimately what I feel is important is science and education. What I'm good at is travel and adapting to different lifestyles. And what was the last one? What I can do is training and talking, obviously not right now because I'm flustered because of time. But yes, you are bringing your climate action hero to life. So draw that little action hero. Okay. So if anybody wants to show it, I'm going to stop my screen. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And you can free to show if you have drawn something. So I can imagine like Ronald's, based on his writing, would be something like, this little dude with like a hammer and like a presentation pointer laser thing on both sides, like Bob the Builder kind of climate hero character, going to talk about design and innovation and trainings.
So I don't know how to draw. How do we do this?
It's just an exercise, right? Ultimately, you don't have to do it right now if you're uninspired by my little butterfly thing, because I can't draw either. But ultimately, that's what we want to think about, right? Who am I? Like, what is this character that I can be, in terms of climate change and ecological crisis and things like that. So it's really just trying to see, okay, where are the gaps? How can I fill the gaps? What am I good at? What is necessary? How do I put them all together in order to build this climate action hero that will now go off and do something for the planet? Right. So that's kind of what we're trying to put all together. So yeah, so just showing you again, this is mine. But yeah, so ultimately, before we end, I just wanted to bring this up as well. This whole idea of we can't pour from an empty cup. Being a climate hero is not easy, right? Because there are so many people who will say that you are wrong. It's so difficult because there's a lot of pressure, and it's also you're probably going to be the minority for a very, very long time, because there are so many people out there that are not having these conversations. So it's really taking care of yourself first. And these 4 hours of deep adaptation, you can look them up. They're really interesting because you're really talking about the idea of how can we keep what makes us strong to be resilient, taking away everything else that does not help us? How can we reconcile with peace, knowing that there will be other people that will not have our best interests, they will not have our ideas in mind, and we'll have to find peace with that. Otherwise, it's going to be another war, right? How do we let go of certain values or beliefs Like maybe I'm not good enough, I'm only one person. How do we let go of that? And how do we restore? How do we bring back things that will help us? Maybe childish creativity, maybe imagination, maybe curiosity, things that we lost. So these kind of things. So you can look up these 4 R's of deep adaptation, but ultimately it's finding a way for you to be strong enough to have this climate action hero actually go and make some impact. Because if we get burnt out and if we really come to a point where we can't do anything, then that's one less person in this process, right? So it's really taking care of yourself first and finding ways that you can work in order that you're going to be okay. But yeah, so this is what I want to leave you guys with. This was a study done by the University of Pennsylvania, and they said that this idea of a tipping point, a social tipping point, is that we reach a percentage of people that a behavior becomes normal. So for example, before COVID, there were very, very few people who used to wear a mask. But because of COVID, it pushed that percentage of people that were wearing a mask over that tipping point. So if you imagine on a top of a mountain, there's a point where you finally go up one side and fall down to the other side. That is the tipping point. And so during COVID, there were enough people to push this boulder up one side of the mountain and then down to the other side, which is why everyone started wearing masks. And then essentially that became a normal behavior. If you didn't wear a mask, then you were the outsider. And after COVID, it pushed it back, right? So then it was really strange if you had a mask because people thought you were very sick. So ultimately, that's all we need to do, right? It's not our responsibility to save the planet, right? The planet doesn't need saving. It's really our human race that does. But if we're able to get enough people to start looking at the world a little bit more ecocentrically, a little bit more planet friendly, a little bit more community based rather than individual, then we can push this boulder over the mountain. And that's kind of all we need to do. So it's really just one person talking to 3 other people, right? 25% is like 3 other people. So if everybody just talks to 3 people, we've done our jobs, that's all that's I mean, you don't have a responsibility to do this, it's just really how do we get more people involved? So it's really through communication and education. So yeah, I'm just gonna leave you guys with this quote that is from E.O. Wilson. That there is no more purpose more inspiring than to begin the age of restoration, reweaving the wondrous diversity of life that surrounds us. And we are so lucky that we are part of this mission, right? That we are educated and informed enough that we know that we are doing this. We have started this age of restoration to now inspire other people to do the same. And so I will leave you with that. And these are the QR codes to subscribe to my articles. So I write a Substack every week. If you want to do the manifesto with me, that's there. And also my contact details are in the black QR codes. And ultimately, you're not alone, right? So you are always going to be supported on this journey because you are. So yeah, with that, thank you very, very much for the last hour of your time. I will hand it back to Magda.
Yeah, thank you so much, Marla. This was amazing. Uh, I did actually also try to draw something, but I wasn't ready. I didn't have a piece of paper, so I ended up drawing it on my notes. Oh, you can't see. Oh, maybe that's better actually, but yeah, it's pretty rough. But thank you for this. I didn't think I'll be prompted to be drawing on this call, so this is a great exercise.
So if
Um,
anybody wants to send me their drawings, please do. Like send it to my email. I will compile them and put it on LinkedIn and send it as a post or something like that. That would be great. So
awesome.
Rebecca, send
I
it to
can
me.
see some on the videos as well. Amazing.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming and for your proactive participation in this. And these were great exercises. I'm glad that I got to practice them as well and not just watch. So it was super useful for me as well. Thank you so much,
Thank you
guys.
everyone for your attention, for coming, and for your participation, and for your questions, and for your answers. Great.
And just to let you know, if you would like to share this workshop, this resource with your friends, this is a recorded call and it will be on our YouTube channel. So just make sure that you subscribe to the Earth Prize on YouTube, and then you'll be notified when this video is up, hopefully very soon. and then you can share it with your friends. Or maybe you can watch the workshop together as a bigger group and go through these exercises as a group ready to take action. And
Yeah,
we'd love to find out if you do that.
with your school or with your organization, please just send me an email. I'm happy to do this over and over and over again. I love it.